Hi, welcome to Flite Test Tech. I'm David, and today we're going to be building the B-25 swappable series. We're going to get started with the fuselage, so let's get it unwrapped and get the parts out. Alright, so now that all the parts are out, we need to weed out all the channels and get everything cleaned up and ready to glue together. Alright, so when you're doing your score lines, you want to just kind of take your razor blade and gently push down. Don't go all the way through the paper, so you don't hit the bottom paper. You just want to gently slide it across. Flip it over and do the same thing on the other side here. And another quick tip, if you're worried about cutting through the paper, you can easily take the end of your knife, dull it on some concrete, and that way it won't cut all the way through. Then afterwards, you just gently peel off just the top layer of paper and foam, like that. Now, if you get little parts that don't want to come out, you can easily just take your knife and just kind of scrape it out of there, like that. And we're all set. So now I'm gonna pause the video and you can take a look and see all the parts that are weeded out, and we'll get started. All right, to get started, you need these two parts, and we're going to simply just flip them over and tape them together right up against each other. You just want to make sure you get everything lined up nice and even. Make sure your corners line up. Just get a better build that way. If anything is off a little bit, it's not the end of the world. It always turns out fine. Now that we've got the tape across, I'm just going to cut off the extra. Then we're going to flip it over and we're going to glue right inside of this seam right here. You just kind of flip it up, take your glue gun, just put a nice generous amount of glue right down inside here. It's always a good idea to have a couple pieces of scrap foam board on hand. In case anything kind of seeps out or anything, you can squeegee it off. I look really good this time, so I don't have to worry about it, but I'll show you in the future if anything pops up like that. So now we just want to hold this flat until it dries. All right, now that that's dry, we're gonna take this little servo doubler and we're gonna stick it right on the back here. You just kind of flip it around, see which way it lines up. Once you got that figured out, just put a little bit of glue right around the edge and set it in place. Line it up with the etch marks. Just push it down real good. All right, and once you're done with that, then you're going to take these little pieces back here and they're gonna be a B-fold, which is beside the top plate. Okay, we're just gonna make sure they fit really good. And then I'm gonna stick some glue right alongside here. Flip that up in place and hold it until it dries. All right, we got the first side done. Now we're gonna repeat the same thing on the other side. Flip that up in place and hold it until it dries. Okay, so now that we got the back done, we need to put our doublers in, and they're just gonna simply go right here on these etch marks, like so. You gotta check, make sure they line up good, and once you know they do, just remove that, put some glue down. You wanna make sure you line these up pretty good with the etch marks that are on the paper. It'll help a lot in the future. Then you wanna repeat the process on the other side as well. Gotta check, make sure they line up good, and once you know they do, just remove that, put some glue down. You wanna make sure you line these up pretty good with the etch marks that are on the paper. All right, once those are dry, I'm simply gonna fold it over here. I'm going to grab my ruler, and we wanna fold these little lips over right here on the edges. I prefer to do it once the doubler's on, so that way you don't get glue all over the table and it makes less of a mess. So we're going to just put a little bit of glue right underneath this piece of paper lip here, like that. And then I'm gonna take my ruler and simply just push it down roll it around, hold it for a few seconds, wait for it to dry, and then repeat it on the other side. All right, so now we're gonna flip it back over here, and then we're gonna check our fold here. And this is a B fold, so it wants to be beside the top plate. Just wanna check, make sure everything lines up good. Once you know it does, you wanna have a square handy, so that way you can set it up alongside the fuselage. So I'm going to just put some glue down in here, a nice healthy bead, from this point to this point, and also along the bottom of this doubler, like so. Once I have that in place, I want to push down real nice and hard. Careful not to wrinkle any foam or anything. Then you're going to grab your square and just hold it up here. Check it in a couple of spots, make sure it's nice and square. The better you get this, the better your plane's going to turn out. It's going to make it nice and square and look really good in the end. Okay, the next step is going to be to glue this back plate on. And basically you just want to line it up, make sure everything looks good. And in this case it does. So I'm going to flip it over here. I'm going to put some glue right along this edge, all the way down to there. Once we have that, we're going to flip it over on the table here and use the table as our friend. Just hold it down, take our square again, hold it on here. Every once in a while you want to kind of move it around on the table just to make sure it's not sticking. So now we're going to repeat the process on the other side the exact same way. Now when I go to do this bottom part, I'm actually taking my fingers and just gently pushing inside here to kind of open this crack up. I stick my glue gun right down in there. Just put a nice healthy bead of glue right along that paper, right in that corner. Once you do that, flip it back over on the table, push this right down on it, hold it in place until it dries. All right, now that we've got the main part of the fuselage folded over, we need these two pieces right here. And if you look real close, there's a little niche marked on them. That signifies up or down. It doesn't matter which way, as long as you have that towards the top of the fuselage or the bottom, you're fine. And if you look inside, there's gonna be some etch marks. You gently just wanna slide this in, make sure it fits good. It's gonna go all the way down to where the hole is for the wing. All right, once you make sure it's a good fit, you're gonna slide that back out. I'm just gonna take my glue gun, I need another glue stick here, and I'm gonna just gently put some glue right down along that seam, right in between those marks. Same thing on this side. And I'm gonna spread this apart, set it right up in there, and right against there. Then I'm gonna hold that until it dries. Once that's dry, we're gonna take our other one and we're gonna check and make sure that it fits right up behind this doubler. And it also goes right down to where the hole is in the wing. That looks great, so now we're gonna glue it in place. To do so, I'm just gonna put some glue right along this doubler and right on the fuselage body. Same thing on this side. Same thing, just kind of spread it apart just a little bit, slide it down in, and hold it till it dries. All right, so now that those are dry, you can see right here is actually our bomb bay. It has a very large cargo area. I designed it that way just to have lots of fun and make sure that we can drop some cool stuff out of it. So the next step we're gonna do is flip it over here, do our windshield. We're just gonna flip this little tab up and we're gonna do a 45 bevel right along here. Like so. We're gonna flip it down, make sure it fits. We need to go a little bit farther. So I'm just gonna make this a little sharper. The whole point behind that is that you do not wanna hit the bottom paper, this top layer of paper when you fold it over. And that gives us a real nice hinge. So when we fold it over, it fits real nice and snug and looks beautiful on the outside. So once that fits, I'm gonna flip it back up. We're just gonna take some glue, put it right inside of here, right on that doubler. Same thing on this side. I'm also gonna put a little bead right along this edge here. And maybe a little bit right along here and here as well. I'm gonna fold that down. Watch, make sure you don't burn yourself. I like to use a ruler to just kind of push it down. That way you don't have to worry about any burns or anything along those lines. Also kind of putting a little bit of pressure right on the outside here to make sure that it's seated in real nice. All right, now that that's dry, we're gonna flip it back over. Now we get to have the fun of putting in our Bombay doors. I've left this so that there are no lines on the outside, but there are on the inside. If you want to put in a Bombay, all you have to do is cut right in here, so that way you can show some marks coming through. So it'll look something like that. All right, so once that's all cut out and ready to go, we're just gonna set it right on top here. Make sure it all fits together good. And it looks great. So we're gonna flip this back off of here. Make sure your servo hole is pointed towards the front, and then there's a little flap of paper sticking off the back. And we're just going to put some glue right along this doubler. On this doubler, right along the Bombay wall here and here, and then just a little bit along here, all the way back to where it starts to change angle. All right, once that's actually on there, I'm gonna flip it over, have the table help me, just push it down. Move it around a little bit to make sure that the glue doesn't stick to the table. I'm also pushing in on the sides just to make sure that it gets a good seat and it's all the way up against. All right, that is beautiful. All right, now that that's all dry, we're gonna focus towards the back of the plane here, and we need this piece. We're just gonna slide it right up underneath of this little lip. Make sure it fits down in there good. Pull it back out. We're simply just going to put some glue right along this edge here. You want to work kind of quick because it's a large piece. We want to go all the way down to where this flap starts. Repeat the same thing on this side. And then we're going to carefully slide it back in, making sure not to burn ourselves with the hot glue. It's all the way down in there. The same thing again, we're gonna flip it over, set it down on the table, make sure we push in on it. Move it around a little bit so it's not glued to the table. Now we're just gonna put a little bit of glue right up underneath of this little flap here. Take our ruler, just simply push it down and make sure it's glued down. All right, so now the main section of the fuselage is pretty much done. We're gonna start on the nose. So now I'm getting ready to start on the nose. I need to cut out all the nose pieces, so we're gonna get that done and start building. Okay, so these are all the pieces you'll need for the nose, and now we just need to weed them out. To get started on the nose, we're gonna take these doublers and we just need to line it up in here and make sure you got the right side, and you might have to flip it over or whatever to line it up with the edge marks inside. Once you got a good fit, just take some glue, put it right down on here. Set it down on top and make sure it's lined up good. Just hold it down for a second, maybe kind of wiggle it around a little bit, make sure it gets a good, nice tight bond. We're gonna do the same thing to the other side. Line it up with the edge marks inside. Once you got a good fit, just take some glue, put it right down on here. Set it down on top, make sure it's lined up good. Okay, once you have the two doublers done, you need to take this piece, you need to peel the paper off the inside of this, make sure you leave the little flaps on the outside here. Then we're just gonna take this and gently roll it on the table to kind of give it some shape. And if you look at the nose, it's a little sharper bend pretty much right in the middle. So we're just gonna kind of roll it a little harder towards the middle. Now this plane is very easy to build. Unfortunately, this part you have to be careful because it is very easy to get it kind of twisted or off a little bit. And you just want to take your time and make sure you do a good job on this part. So now I kind of have my shape. We're going to start gluing here. I'm going to start on the bottom part here, which is the flat side, right along here. We're going to take that and just set it right down inside here. Just make sure everything looks good and it lines up nice. I'm going to go pretty much right to where this bend starts, right here. I'm just going to put some glue right along this seam right here. And then also right along this corner, right to where the bend started. I'm using the table, I'm going to set it right down on here. You want to have it lined right up with this edge. I'm going to roll it a little bit, make sure I get some glue in there. Make sure it's following the bend good. Then I'm going to take my square, hold it right here on the side, let it dry good. All right, so now that that's good and dry and square, we're going to basically just take some glue, put it right inside here, follow this right around the front. We want to stop probably right about there, so that way we just make it past the bend. And I'm going to gently set it down here, just roll it on the table. Same thing, just hold it until it dries. All right, so now that we've got that dry, we're going to take this last bit here, just go all the way around. I'm also going to come back in here and try to get a little bit of glue on this doubler, just on the inside edge. Use the table as your friend, just fold it on over, and make sure it dries, and then we're on to the next side. All right, so I'm just checking to make sure that everything fits together good, and it looks like we've got a good fit, so I'm gonna start right here on the flatter spot on the bottom. We're gonna put some glue right along the doubler, and right along this little corner right here. We're gonna go all the way up till it starts to round, and we're gonna stick it in there. Make sure we're lined up right here on the edge. And I'm going to push it down on the table, make sure we've got a good seal, make sure everything's squared up. Just hold it there until it dries. All right, so now that that's dry, we're just going to come in this crack right here, put some glue down in there, come all the way around the nose. Same thing, just kind of shove it in place. This time I want to make sure we're good and lined up, so I am not going to put it on the table. I'm just going to hold it here. Careful not to burn yourself with glue. And one more spot right here at the top. I'm going to stick my glue gun right down in there. Just put a little bit of glue right along there. Flip it over, push it right down to the table. And hold it until it's dry. Now that that's dry, I'm just going to come back along, put a little bit of glue right along these edges, right there, right there. I'm going to take my ruler, just fold this over, fold that over. All right, now that the nose is done, we're going to attach this to the fuselage. To do so, we're going to need this piece right here. Make sure it's all weeded out, and as you can see, there's an A-fold mark on here, so that means that the side plates go above the bottom plate. And to do that, you usually just set it down on the table, fold it up like this. Make sure everything goes good. Make sure you get that muscle memory. Once you do that, we're just gonna put some glue right along here. Fold it over. Take our triangle, hold it there until it dries, and repeat on the other side. Okay, now that that's dry, we're just going to take our hobby knife, and right here on the front you can see there's a little bit sticking out in front of this curve. We just want to cut that off flush with the curve. Just gives a better fit into the nose. Looks a little bit cleaner too. Next, we're going to take our fuselage. Make sure this fits in here. Might be a little tight. You want to make sure it slides all the way to the back. All right, so now I'm going to pull this back out of here. And it's actually a little bit of a tight fit, so I'm going to kind of just push it against the table here a little bit, apply a little bit of pressure. All right, now in doing so, it should fit a little bit better. All right, it's a tighter fit, but it fits. Now, we need to glue this in. You want to make sure that this tray is facing upward and the curves are on the bottom. And this slides all the way back to where the bomb bay is. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on here, a little bit of glue on here. It doesn't take a lot because this usually fits pretty snug. I'm going to kind of tip it in here at an angle. Try not to get my fingers in the glue. We're just going to slide it back in there. Make sure it's all the way back and pushed all the way down to the bottom. All right, that looks pretty good. Then the next step we want to do is just kind of take the edges of this foam and just kind of push it in a little bit. Give it a nice little rounded edge so that the nose slips on easier. Also going to take and kind of push down on these edges in here too, just to kind of round them a little bit, make it easier to slide it on and off. You can use a marker or the end of your hobby knife or something like that to push it down if you need to. And it should slip right on. Perfect. All right, the next step is going to be moving on to the wings, so we're going to get started on that. So we're going to get started off with the wing spars first. You need both of these. All right, so now that I got the spars out, we're going to weed these out. All right, once you have them all weeded out, we need to glue them together. Now, these are actually A-folds. So to do this, we're going to take the plate, lay it on the side, and fold the bottom plate up next to it, like that. Once you get a good fit, just take some glue, put it along here. We're going to repeat the same process on this side. Okay, now that that's formed, I'm actually going to take and cut out these knockouts here. There'll be just a circle, and then there's one here for the servo. Now we're going to repeat this process on the other side. now we're moving on to the wings. We've got our spars done. Now it's time to actually assemble the wing. So we're gonna fold this right along this line here. So it's from here to here. Fold it. We need to put a 45-degree angle right across here and right across here, making sure not to hit the paper in the middle. Once that 45's done, you want to gently just fold it over. Make sure it doesn't have too much resistance. Feels good. If you do hit the paper at all, it's not the end of the world. You can just put a piece of tape on the outside and it'll be fine. All right, now that we got our 45 done, we need to break this part right here and do our trailing edge spar. So this is a C-fold. I'm just going to take it and fold it over. Try to get that memory of how it's supposed to go together. Once I do that, I'm just going to take some glue, put it right along here, and over on this side too. Just a little bit on the paper down here, just to kind of hold it together so it gives it a nice finish. Now, in this one, it actually broke right here because there isn't much meat holding that together. It's not a big deal if it does break. You just fold it over. Nobody's going to know the difference, and it's still going to look beautiful. Or if it stays together, you just fold the whole thing over at one time. All right, now that that's done, we're going to take our spar. You got to make sure you get the right side. Just got to line it up on here and see if it fits, which in this case it does. But yeah, if you have the right side, there's actually some etch marks up here at the top and at the bottom. And if you set it right on those and line it up, your servo hole and your wire hole for your nacelle should line up perfectly, which they do in this case, so we're gonna glue it up. All right, so now I'm simply just gonna put some glue along the bottom edge of this. And once again, we wanna line it up really good with these etch marks. And simply just push it down, hold it in place, and wait for it to dry. All right, so now that we got the spar glued in, we're simply just gonna fold the wing over here, bend it a little bit, make sure everything lines up good. And once we're happy with that, we're gonna open it back up here. We're gonna take our glue gun, shove it right down in these little cracks right here. Just pump some glue down in them. Same thing on this one. Now you want to make sure you don't put too much glue in here because you don't want to glue it to the spar just yet. This is just so that the wing holds its shape. I'm gonna set it down on here. I'm actually gonna kind of lift it up, make sure it's not gluing itself down. Set it back down, hold it nice and flat. Wait for that to dry. All right, now that it's dry and it holds its form, we're gonna flip it open here. We're just gonna put a nice heavy layer of glue right along this leading edge. And also along the spars. Then we're gonna fold it back over, hold it down until it dries. Now that that's dry, we're gonna flip it over. We're just gonna open up this seam right here a little bit so we can get access into there. I'm just gonna take my glue gun right down in there. Just a nice little bead of glue right along this trailing edge. Like so. And I'm gonna flip it down, lay it down on the table, push it down, make sure it's all glued. Hold that until it dries. Okay, now that that's dry, we're gonna go on ahead, clean out all these cavities here for the nacelle and for the servo. Now included in your kit, there should be two little square pieces. These are just for the servos to sit on. So we wanna cut those out, set one aside for now, we'll need it for the other wing. And this little piece right here, just sits right down inside where the servo goes, all the way to the bottom, or actually the top of the wing. So I'm just gonna stick a little bit of glue on there. Stick it down in there, like that. All right, once you have that done, we're gonna take this aileron, break it open here. And we're gonna put a nice bevel on this edge, making sure not to hit the paper in the middle. Once you have that, make sure it opens and closes no problem, and swings freely. And then we're going to take some glue, put it right along this paper line here. Scrap piece of foam, smooth it all out. And then we're going to hold that open until it dries, and then check and make sure that we don't have any issues with it binding up. All right, it doesn't bind up at all. It's moving freely, so we can move on to the other wing. Basically, you just repeat the same process over again on the other side. So we're going to fold this right along this line here. So it's from here to here. Fold it. We need to put a 45-degree angle right across here and right across here, making sure not to hit the paper in the middle. All right, now that we got our 45 done, we need to break this apart right here and do our trailing edge spar. So this is a C-fold. I'm just going to take it and fold it over. Try to get that memory of how it's supposed to go together. Once I do that, I'm just going to take some glue, put it right along here, and over on this side too. Just a little bit on the paper down here. All right, now that that's done, we're going to take our spar. Just got to make sure you get the right side. Just got to line it up on here and see if it fits, which in this case it does. All right, so now I'm simply just going to put some glue along the bottom edge of this. Once again, we want to line it up really good with these edge marks. And then simply just push it down, hold it in place, and wait for it to dry. All right, so now that we got the spar glued in, we're simply just going to fold the wing over here, bend it a little bit, make sure everything lines up good. And once we're happy with that, we're going to open it back up here. We're going to take our glue gun, shove it right down in these little cracks right here. Just pump some glue down in them. Same thing on this one. Now you want to make sure you don't put too much glue in here because you don't want to glue it to the spar just yet. This is just so that the wing holds its shape. I'm going to set it down on here. I'm actually going to kind of lift it up, make sure it's not gluing itself down. Set it back down, hold it nice and flat, wait for that to dry. All right, now that it's dry and it holds its form, we're going to flip it open here. We're just going to put a nice heavy layer of glue right along this leading edge. And also along the spars. Then we're going to fold it back over, hold it down until it dries. Now that that's dry, we're going to flip it over. We're just going to open up this seam right here a little bit so we can get access into there. I'm just going to take my glue gun right down in there. Just a nice little bead of glue right along this trailing edge. Like so. And I'm going to flip it down, lay it down on the table, push it down, make sure it's all glued. Hold that until it dries. Okay, now that that's dry, we're going to go on ahead, clean out all these cavities here for the nacelle and for the servo. Now, included in your kit, there should be two little square pieces. These are just for the servos to sit on. So we want to cut those out, set one aside for now. We'll need it for the other wing. And And this little piece right here just sits right down inside where the servo goes, and all the way to the bottom, or actually the top of the wing. So I'm just going to stick a little bit of glue on there. Stick it down in there like that. All right, once you have that done, we're going to take this aileron, break it open here. We're going to put a nice bevel on this edge, making sure not to hit the paper in the middle. Once you have that, make sure it opens and closes no problem, and swings freely. And then we're going to take some glue, put it right along this paper line here. Scrap piece of foam, smooth it all out. And then we're going to hold that open until it dries, and then check and make sure that we don't have any issues with it binding up. Now, included in the kit, there should be a dihedral gauge. It looks like this. The next step that we have is we have to get our two wings together, like so. Get a piece of tape. We just want to make sure these are lined up really good, even with each other on the bottom. After you get it taped together, you want to flip it over here. We're just going to put a nice healthy bead of glue right down in this crack along the top, bottom, and the back here, and right along the spar. I'm going to put quite a bit. I want to make sure this wing's nice and strong so it holds up for a long time. I'm going to lay it flat on the table, lift up the one end, take this, there's a little lip on it that has a slight angle. We're just going to stick that right underneath by where the wing spar is and hold it down until it dries. Now you want to make sure you leave this dry for a long time. I'd say at least like 2 to 3 minutes. Make sure that glue is set up really good so that way your wing doesn't move on you. All right, now that that's dry, we're just going to take a piece of tape to reinforce this. Put it all the way along the top edge here. And we're just going to fold that over on the bottom, front and back. So now that our wing is done, we're going to secure it to the fuselage. Basically, we're just going to slide it in here. Should be a really nice fit. And I'm being careful not to push too hard so I don't make wrinkles in the foam. You just kind of wiggle it back and forth. Slowly get it until it's in all the way. Now, I'm going to cut open this little hatch here so I can look down in and see where the center of the wing is and make sure I'm good in the center in the fuselage. So once you have it centered up in the fuselage, you want to get a good piece of scrap foam. You want to take your glue gun, just squeeze them right down in this seam here. Then take your scrap piece of foam, just squeegee it in there, make it nice and clean and look really good. Push it down inside of the crack and it should hold up for a long time. I'm going to continue to do this on the other side and also the bottom. We're just going to give it a little bit of time to sit here and dry out and make sure it doesn't move around on us. Okay, so now that the wing's joined to the fuselage, we need to get started on the nacelle. So I'm going to get those parts out, get them cut out and weeded. All right, so we need to peel the paper off of the backs of these and make sure that you leave the longer piece around the outside. And you're also going to weed out the edges of them. You're going to weed out here, here, and here, 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 and here. All right, let's get started. So first off, these are beside the bottom plate. So we want to take this, bend it up this way. Same thing on this side. Make sure everything fits really nice. And then we're going to take our doubler. You have to be careful with these because there is a slight difference between them. Like if you look close right now, this one is not actually coming up to the top. So this actually goes on this side then. So we're going to take this and flip it over. And then it lines up perfectly, as you can see here. Once you find the right piece, we're going to just glue it on. Once again, make sure you line it up really good with the edge marks, with the top edge of the paper. Down, wiggle it around, make sure it gets a good seat, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, the next step we're going to do is we're going to fold this up and glue it on. Basically, we're just going to put a bead of glue right along here, right along the bottom of this doubler. We want to stop it just short of coming all the way to the end because it stops on this piece. Fold it up, take our square, hold it here until it's dry, and then repeat on the other side. All right, once you have both of those done, the next step is going to be to fold over this top piece. We just want to fold it here and make sure it fits before we do any gluing. Looks really good. And you'll also see there's a little notch right here that it lines up with. So we're just going to put some glue along here, right along this edge too. Fold it over. And I'm going to flip it over and bring it over to the edge of the table because of these little notches here. We don't want them to hit. And apply a little bit of pressure inward on both sides. Make sure it doesn't stick to the table. All right, now that we have the main body of our nacelle done, the next step is going to be curving this piece to go on the back. I'm basically just bringing it over to the back edge of the table here, rolling it over. This has a very, very sharp angle right here on the back. So I am going to line it up here, kind of figure out where that is, right in this area. I'm just going to push it really hard right in that area. Fold it over good. And then once you have that all ready, we're going to flip it over. We're going to put some glue right along here. Same thing on this side. Going about 3 inches from the end. And we're just going to set it down on the table here. Roll it around. I'm putting a little bit of inward pressure on it again. Just make sure that it's sitting all the way against. Make sure you don't have any glue globs on the table. And we're basically just going to finish it all the way around, like so. Same thing on this side. And we're just going to set it on the table and roll it right around. Then we're going to repeat the exact same process on the next one. So first off, these are beside the bottom plate. So we want to take this, bend it up this way. Same thing on this side. Make sure everything fits really nice. And then we're going to take our doubler. You have to be careful with these because there is a slight difference between them. Like if you look close right now, this one is not actually coming up to the top. So this actually goes on this side then. So we're going to take this and flip it over. And then it lines up perfectly, as you can see here. Once you find the right piece, we're going to just glue it on. Once again, make sure you line it up really good with the edge marks, with the top edge of the paper. Down, wiggle it around, make sure it gets a good seat. And then we'll move on to the next one. All right, the next step we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this up, glue it on. Basically, we're just gonna put a bead of glue right along here, right along the bottom of this doubler. We wanna stop it just short of coming all the way to the end because it stops on this piece. Fold it up, take our square, hold it here until it's dry, and then repeat on the other side. All right, once you have both of those done, the next step is going to be to fold over this top piece. We just want to fold it here and make sure it fits before we do any gluing. Looks really good. And you'll also see there's a little notch right here that it lines up with. So we're just going to put some glue along here, right along this edge too. Fold it over. And I'm going to flip it over and bring it over to the edge of the table because of these little notches here. We don't want them to hit. And apply a little bit of pressure inward on both sides. Make sure it doesn't stick to the table. All right, now that we have the main body of our nacelle done, the next step is going to be curving this piece to go on the back. Basically just bringing it over to the back edge of the table here, rolling it over. This has a very, very sharp angle right here on the back. So I am going to line it up here, kind of figure out where that is, right in this area. I'm just going to push it really hard right in that area. Fold it over good. And then once you have that all ready, we're going to flip it over. We're going to put some glue right along here. Same thing on this side. Going about 3 inches from the end. And we're just going to set it down on the table here. Roll it around. I'm putting a little bit of inward pressure on it again. Just make sure that it's sitting all the way against. Make sure you don't have any glue globs on the table. And we're basically just gonna finish it all the way around, like so. Same thing on this side. And we're just gonna set it on the table and roll it right around. So now that the nacelles are done, we're ready to start working on electronics. Let's hop into it. I'm actually going to cut these little notches out of here so they're out of our way. And pull the nose off. All right, so for the B-25, we're actually using a Power Pack B twin pack. Basically, we just have the B pack and our power add-on. So yeah, it includes servos, Y harnesses, everything you'll need for the B-25. The only thing extra you have to add is one extra servo wire. I believe it's 20 millimeters. So we're gonna start off with our ailerons and the wings. And to do so, we're gonna need 2 9-gram servos and our Y harness. All right, so we sell a servo centering tool, and it's always a good idea to check your servos because they get bumped around and stuff while you're building. Just center them as you're installing them. It's always a good idea. All right, they are both working, so I'm just gonna hit the center button. Now they're centered, and I can disconnect them and get them put them in the wings. Okay, so I got our 2 9-gram servos out, 2 extensions, and a Y cable for our wing. Now, as you're doing this, I always make sure to add a little piece of tape around here to make sure that it doesn't get pulled out if you have any hard hits or anything like that. It saves a lot of frustration in the future of trying to dig it out of the wing. Now, you want to make sure that you plug these in correct too. In our kit right now, you'll see there's black, red, and white. The black is ground, and then there's positive, and then the white is signal. In this case, the servo has yellow as the signal, and then red as the positive, and brown as the ground. So we want to make sure we hook the 2 signal wires up together. Usually it's the lightest colored wires in the bunch. Once you do that, you just add tape to it, and you're all set. Now, it can be a little bit tricky to get these wires fed down through the wing. So what I like to do is set it up on its end, slowly just feed it down through. And grab it through the hole where the wires come out for the nacelle. Like so. Pull it all the way up. Then I'm gonna flip it around here, stick my servo arm on, and we're using the just single straight one for this. And you also want to make sure that you put your screw in the end. And just have it as straight up and down as you possibly can. If it's off a little bit, it's okay, but you want it as close as possible to that. And then you want to scuff up your servo a little bit. I just take a knife, kind of scratch it. And it also helps to clean them off with alcohol in case there's any oils or anything like that on them. Just put a little bit of glue on here. Stick it right down in there. Then I'm going to tip it back up. And if you look through this hole right here, you can see there's a hole in the wing that actually goes into where the wire comes out. So you want to feed it right down in. Just kind of jiggle it around until you feel it. And you can also use a servo wire with a little hook on the end for this if you want to. I just think it's pretty easy just to get it fed through like that. So now that I have that, I need to get out my servo wires and control horns for the wing, which come with the kit. We're going on the outer hole here. This is a big plane and the control surfaces aren't very large. So by going all the way out here, it's going to give us the most movement possible, and also on the outside of the servo arm. So I'm just sticking it in there, and I'm going to put it right in the slot where it's supposed to go in the aileron. Make sure we're nice and lined up back here. Figure out exactly where I need it to go. I'm going to fold it over. And this is what we like to call a modified Z-bend. What we do is once we fold it over, you grab it this way, fold it back up like that. So it'll be like that. But then you hold it again, twist it down, and then you've got a full Z-bend. I'm going to snip off the extra. Pull this back out. It can be a little tough sometimes to get them shoved in through this hole, but you just kind of wiggle it around and it usually goes. And then we're just going to check it for fit again one more time. Looks really nice and flat here. Our servo's still straight up and down. I didn't bump it at all. So now we're going to go on ahead and glue it in. Just going to put a little bit of glue right down inside of that slot. Shove it down in there. Careful because glue can come out on the back side here. I don't want to see anybody get burnt. And you just make sure it's nice and level and let it dry. And then we'll move on to the other side. So what I like to do is set it up on its end. Slowly just feed it down through. You can grab it through the hole where the wires come out for the nacelle. And I'm going to flip it around here. Stick my servo arm on. And we're using the just single straight one for this. And you also want to make sure that you put your screw in the end. And then you want to scuff up your servo a little bit. I just take a knife, kind of scratch it. Just put a little bit of glue on here. Stick it right down in there. Then I'm going to tip it back up. And if you look through this hole right here, you can see there's a hole in the wing that actually goes into where the wire comes out. So you want to feed it right down in. Just kind of jiggle it around until you feel it. So now that I have that, I need to get out my servo wires and control horns for the wing. We're going on the outer hole here. This is a big plane and the control surfaces aren't very large. So by going all the way out here, it's going to give us the most movement possible. And also on the outside of the servo arm. So I'm just sticking it in there and I'm going to put it right in the slot where it's supposed to go in the aileron. Make sure we're nice and lined up back here. Figure out exactly where I need it to go. And I'm going to fold it over. And this is what we like to call a modified Z-bend. What we do is once we fold it over, you grab it this way, fold it back up like that. So it'll be like that. But then you hold it again, twist it down, and then you've got a full Z-bend. Pull this back out. It can be a little tough sometimes to get them shoved in through this hole, but you just kind of wiggle it around and it usually goes. And then we're just going to check it for fit again one more time. Looks really nice and flat here. Our servo's still straight up and down. I didn't bump it at all. So now we're going to go on ahead and glue it in. Just going to put a little bit of glue right down inside of that slot. Shove it down in there. Careful because glue can come out on the back side here. I don't want to see anybody get burnt. All right, so the next thing we have to do really quick is hook up our Y harness for our ailerons. It's pretty simple. Same thing as before, just make sure you match up the signal wires together. Plug that in and plug that in. And then we're going to put a little piece of tape over them to lock them in place. All right, the next step we want to do is get one of our ESCs out, and we also need our Y harness for the power. We're simply just going to feed this down through the hole and hopefully get it right back out to where the nacelle goes. Now it's a little tight, so you got to kind of jiggle it around. Oops, I actually went too far. Pull that out like that, and then do the same thing on the other side. And once you have that done, we need to get our servo extensions and plug that into our ESC. feed that down through. I'm also going to plug this into that wire harness just to help hold it in place so we don't have to worry about it falling out and pulling on the cables or anything. We are going to get our second ESC and do the same thing again on the other side. All right, now we're going to flip it back over on its top. Make sure you don't have any glue globs or anything on your table so we're not denting anything up. I'm kind of taking these wires and just kind of setting them off to the side so none of the plugs are pushing on the fuselage. Now we need to check on these. If you look close, you'll see that there's an angle on this piece. This one is angled that way, so it would go over on this wing. And then this one, the one we need right now, it's angled the opposite way, so it'll go on this wing. All we need to do, shove that back in there. And I like to kind of take these little tabs, just kind of smash them in a little bit. It helps get them centered up on their holes inside the wing. Do a test fit. Fits on there really nice. Now we're just going to get some glue. Glue right along here. I like to do just a little bit on the sides of these tabs, just to give it a little bit of extra strength. Same thing on this side. Flip it over, get it lined back up, push it back down. Now I'm not actually pushing this against the table, I'm actually just holding it with my hands and pushing down on it. We don't want to mess up the dihedral or anything in the wings, so make sure you're always supporting it when you push down. And we just want to hold it until it's good and dry. Alright, so now this one's done. We're going to repeat the process on the other side and do the exact same thing. Why am I struggling to hold on to this thing? All right, now that both nacelles are on, I'm going to just take a little bit of glue, go right along this edge here. Do that on this side as well. Over here. And over on the back side here. Now the reason why I'm doing this is, you know, the nacelles, they hold all the way to the airplane while it's pulling through the air, and also our landing gear goes on the inside here, so I want to make sure it's good and strong. While we're at it, I didn't show you guys this, but I want to just kind of shove in on these a little bit, just so that way air flows through from the motors. And now we are ready to put our tail together. All right, for this part of the build, these are the pieces that are required. For now, we're just going to set these aside. We're going to focus on this piece. We're going to start off with just breaking this and this side in half, folding them over like that. After we fold them over, we're going to put a bevel right on this edge. Just be careful not to hit that paper in the middle. We're going to stop it right in that area. Do the same thing on this side. We're gonna flip it over. Do the same thing on this side. Doing a little extra on this side, a little bit more than a 45, just to make sure it has room to fold over. And the same thing on this one. All right, there we go. So now that this is done, I'm just going to test and make sure that this folds over. We want to fold it over. It's going to have quite a bit of resistance there. We just want to push it over. Make sure that this line right here lines up with the edge of the paper. Like that. Once you do that, do the same thing on the other side. Same thing. We want to make sure that the edge, this cut edge, lines right up with that line. All right, we're just going to take some glue, put it on there, fold it over. Just make sure everything lines up good. We're going to hold it for a few minutes. And we're going to do the same thing to this side. All right, now that we got that glued, we're gonna simply just break this open, fold it completely over. We're gonna put a real nice bevel right on this edge here. I'm gonna check and make sure that doesn't have any resistance. Gets good deflection. All right, I think we are good. So now that that's done, I'm going to come back over to my hardware pack. I'm going to grab a popsicle stick. We're simply just going to line that up right in the middle, as close as we can. I'm going to put a mark just next to this line, like that. Once you have that, you can take your X-Acto knife, hobby knife, whatever you have, do that, and break it off, like that. Once you have that to the right length, just want to double check, make sure it looks good. We're going to simply just put some glue on this and glue it down. This will basically just add a little bit of strength to this joint right here because there isn't a lot of foam board. We don't want things to warp or get any kinds of wonky on us. All right, that looks great. So now we're just going to open this up, make sure we got a squeegee around here. We're simply going to do like we did on the ailerons and put a line of glue right along that hinge line. Like so. We're going to come back, squeegee it down, make sure it's nice and flat. And just make sure you leave it sit open till the glue dries so you don't glue the hinge together. All right, next we're going to take our fuselage and get it back up here on the table. This is kind of a neat little thing that I came up with. Just flip this up, and this basically just keys right in here. It's a nice snug fit. Just want to make sure everything's lined up good. Make sure it's pushed all the way forward so it's touching right here, and same thing on the other side. And then you can kind of look in the back here. Make sure you have the same space between there and there. Looks like I got to go that way a little bit, so I'm just going to kind of push it over. Right there looks perfect. After you get that in place, you're going to take this and just hinge it down like that. Now we're going to take some glue, put it right along here. Get another squeegee. squeegee it down like that. We'll do that on the other 4 sides. And we're simply going to lift this back up. Put a bead of glue right along this edge and right along this edge. And flip it back down. Make sure it lines up with the back of the fuselage here. Just hold it until it dries. All right, after that's dry, basically going to just take this little piece back here and it's going to fold right up in here. You might have to do a little bit of trimming. You just got to check and see how it fits on your model. Looks like this one just needs a little bit taken off. So I'm just going to come in here, just a little cut right here, but I'm not going to go through the backing paper, just the front layer of paper and the front layer of foam. Like that. Peel that out of there. And we'll check it again and see if it fits. And it does. It fits perfect this time. So we're just going to take some glue right in here, along this edge, along the top, and along this side. Now, since this is a small part, there's a lot of glue on it. You want to be careful when you're pushing it in there not to burn your fingers. So I'm just going to take my ruler, push it against here, make sure it's nice and flat. All right, the next step is to put the rudders on. And if you look real close here, you'll see there's an etch line on the rudder and then the tab. The tab lines up right here and the etch line goes right along the top edge. So we're gonna just kind of take this little nub here, squish it down a little, do a test fit and make sure it fits on there good. And it fits really nice. So I'm just gonna take my glue gun. You gotta make sure you don't put any glue on this back surface, just right here and right here. I'm just gonna go right there, and then all the way along this bottom surface. Put a little bit of glue right there too, just to be safe. And we're gonna stick that on there. You gotta make sure you hold it nice and straight. Just hold it flat up against it. And as long as it's flat up against the inside of the foam board here, you know it's straight up and down. Give this a good bit of time to dry. Make sure it doesn't move on you. All right, now that that's good and dry, take my glue gun, put a nice bead of glue right along this edge. Make sure you don't hit your actual tail surface here. Right in there. Give this as much strength as we can. I was debating on whether or not to put popsicle sticks or anything along here just to kind of shore this up. And I decided it was strong enough if you just put a bead of glue all the way around it. Once this dries a little bit, we'll flip it over and do the same thing to the bottom. Then we'll continue the process to the other rudder. All right, now once you're done gluing your rudders on, we're going to flip this back around here and we're going to start installing the servo for the tail. Just need to get my servo out and get it centered just like we did on the ailerons. Now these servo centering tools are a great tool to have. They're available in our crafty kit along with most of the stuff you see me using. We're going to come over here, just verify which way it needs to go in. It's going to plug in just like that. We want the control horn to be going downward towards the bottom of the plane. I'm going to stick my screw in here. All right, so once you get your servo centered, you're going to have to add on an extra extension here. We'll put a piece of tape over that. And we're going to feed it down into the fuselage. Try to make sure it goes nice and straight so it goes towards the front, like so. I'm just going to stick it in there for now so it doesn't flop around back here. And we're going to lift the plane up, just kind of jiggle it a little bit, And right there it is, perfect. Now since we got it out here, I'm gonna grab a little piece of tape. And just stick it across here to hold it so it doesn't fall back in and we don't have to fish it back out later. Now, the kit comes with enough pieces of wire to use one piece of wire for each thing, so you don't have to put a new Z-bend in it, but I like to save as much of that stuff as I can for my toolbox later on, just so I have extra. All right, so real quick, we're gonna glue this servo in place. I'm just gonna pull it out, just glop a little bit of glue under there, same thing on the back side here, then push it in there. All right, a little bit of a trick here. I'm actually gonna take the nose of the plane, put it underneath of here, just to hold it up off the table so I don't smash these. If you're working at home, you can just kind of stick your airplane off the side of the table. That's perfectly fine. All right, we're just gonna shove this control horn right down in the elevator there. Make sure it looks real nice and straight. Get our pliers over here. We just want to make sure that this control surface is nice and flat with the actual wing. Let me do this. Now, if you're leery of making all these bends, the kit also does include linkage stoppers. And they're a lot easier to use, but personally I don't like to use them. It's just another fail point. So I try to keep it simple and just make Z-bends. Now that I've got that bent, I'm just going to put this in the furthest out hole, just like the ailerons, and it'll give you the perfect amount of throw every time. Make sure it fits. Pull it out of the way, and just put a bead of glue right down inside that crack, and shove this back in and make sure you're nice and lined up and flush on there. Now, if you're struggling to try to feel if it's flush or not, you can easily take any sort of straight edge, ruler, whatever you want, and just put it underneath of here and just hold it on there, and that'll give you a surface to go against to make sure that it's nice and straight. It's really coming together now. The next step that we have to do is the power pods. All right, so now we're getting ready to start working on the power pods. It's a real simple task here. I just have to weed these out. So a lot of our planes have to have thrust angle and things of that nature. This one does not, because it's twin engine. It doesn't need any sort of deflection in the motors or anything like that to keep it going straight. It just naturally wants to go straight because there's two motors. So this one's a B-fold. Basically, you just lay the bottom plate on the table and fold this up next to it. You want to check, make sure they fit good, then we're going to glue them. We're going to do the same thing on the other side here. Okay, after that cools down, we're going to take our motor mount. We're going to set it right on here, make sure it fits and lines up good. It looks really nice, so we're going to glue it on. To do so, we're just going to run a bead of glue on this edge, across the bottom here too. Set it back down on there. Careful not to burn yourself. And I'm just going to grab some packing tape here. Put right over top of it like that. And that just reinforces this, gives it a little extra strength in case you come down and have any hard landings, or if you're not using landing gear on this and just belly landing, prop catches the ground or something, you don't want to rip your motor off. After you get the tape on, we're just going to go around in here, just cut out some of this tape to expose the holes. The ESC is going to be mounted underneath of here just for better cooling. You'll see in the near future how it slides in, but I always cut it out just to let more air flow through. Then we're going to come over to our motor, and get our X brace put on. And in this case, there are some little pan head screws that are short. You want to use these so that way the motor or the screw doesn't go up inside of the motor and do damage to it. We're going to get all 4 of these screws put in, and then we're going to screw it onto the firewall. All right, got all 4 of those screws in for the X mount. Now we're going to set it right down on top here, and it should line up pretty good with some holes already. And we're just going to take these little pointed screws and screw it on in there. All right, now this engine nacelle is all done. We're going to do the other one the exact same way. You want to check and make sure they fit good. Then we're going to glue them. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. Okay, after that cools down, we're going to take our motor mount. We're going to set it right on here, make sure it fits and lines up good. It looks really nice, so we're going to glue it on. To do so, we're just going to run a bead of glue on this edge, across the bottom here too. And then just set it back down on there. Careful not to burn yourself. I'm just going to grab some packing tape here. Over top of it like that, and that just reinforces this, gives it a little extra strength. After you get the tape on, we're just going to go around in here, just cut out some of this tape. Then we're going to come over to our motor and get our X brace put on. And in this case, there are some little pan head screws that are short. You want to use these so that way the motor or the screw doesn't go up inside of the motor and do damage to it. We're going to get all 4 of these screws put in, and then we're going to screw it onto the firewall. All right, got all 4 of those screws in for the X mount. Now we're going to set it right down on top here, and it should line up pretty good with some holes already. And we're just going to take these little pointed screws and screw it on in there. All right, so we are currently on to installing the motors on the B-25. Right now I just have to check motor direction. So to do so, I am going to plug the motors in to the ESCs that we previously installed. Currently, we need to make sure these are spinning in opposite direction of each other. It doesn't really necessarily matter which way they spin. You just want them to be opposite for counter-rotating props. So I'm just gently feeling this. This one is spinning clockwise, and this one is spinning clockwise. So basically, all I have to do is unplug my battery here, and we're going to switch 2 motor wires. And that'll reverse the channel, or reverse the motor. I'm going to take that one, put it in here, and that one, put it in here. Now, it doesn't matter which 2 you switch, as long as you swap 2 motor wires, and we'll plug back in here. It'll switch the direction of the motor, and everything will be good. Now it's going counterclockwise, and that one's going clockwise. That's perfect. We just need to install the motors. To do so, I'm going to gently just kind of pull a little bit of slack out over here as I slide the motors in. I'm going to put some glue on the bottom of this ESC and glue it right to the bottom of this pod. And we're just going to stick that right down on there. Once that sets up, I'm just going to kind of fold these wires back like that. We're going to slide this right in. And as I was saying earlier, with the ESC being on the bottom of the power pod, we'll get plenty of airflow flowing right through here, right over that ESC and right out the back. So it'll stay nice and cool. You won't have any problems. We're just going to slide this all the way back until it stops. And we're going to get some barbecue skewers out here. And there's already holes in the outside here, but I didn't put them on the power pod itself. So what you're going to do is take the pointy end, just kind of stick it in there, make sure it goes all the way through. Do the same thing on the other one. And I'm going to break that off. I'm going to come in here and do the same thing on this side. That, like that, and then a little bit of work and get it to slide right through, no problems. Just want to leave just a little bit sticking out so that way if you ever have to get back in there, you can get a hold of them like that. I'm going to take this one. Do the same thing. All right, you're going to repeat the same process on the other side as well. All right, at this point, we've got our plane built. Now we just need to hook up our receiver and we'll be all set. If you want to do so, we have plenty of videos to show how to hook up receivers and also do differential thrust. The links will be below. Okay, so we just got our receiver in. Now we're on to our last part of the build, which is putting our turret on. This covers up the receiver and it also makes it very accessible too. So this is the turret, and this is what it should look like after you're done weeding it all out. So basically, to get started on the turret here, take this edge that I already peeled the paper off of. We're just going to gently curl it over the table, just like we did before on the nacelles. Get a nice bend all the way around this time. You can start getting it to hold its shape pretty good. All right, that's perfect. So now, if you look, we've got a B for beside. So we're going to take this over to the edge of the table, fold this up like this. Just make sure it fits really nice. We look really good there, so I'm going to glue it. Just want to put a little bit of glue right there, and right over here, just to keep the paper down. Take it back over to the edge of the table, flip it up like so, and just check and make sure you're nice and flat. It's kind of a hard shape to deal with, but it'll look really clean when it's all done. Okay, once that side's dry, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, after you get done with that, you're going to have a piece that looks like this. The next step is going to be to just round this right over. Like that. You gotta check. I left a little bit of extra on here for some people. Other people, it might just fit perfect. Looks like in our situation, it's fitting really nice. But if you have to do any trimming right in here, feel free to do so. That way it'll just get a nice clean fit. After you make sure it fits, just take some glue, put it right along here, along this edge, along this edge, and right along this edge. And simply set it on the table, and roll it over all the way to there, and then just kind of make sure you push on it on the sides here, make sure it's all the way in. And like that, your turret's all done. We're just gonna set it on top here, make sure it fits good, and then we're gonna add some guns to it. So you just basically slip it down inside, and then you slide it backwards, and that locks it in place so it can't come off. We're gonna get ourselves, got some leftover barbecue skewer here, we'll use that. We're just gonna, somewhere right in there, we'll just stick a hole. Come over here, do the same thing. And we're just gonna take 2 pieces, cut them off about the same length. Going about 3 inches or so. We're just gonna test fit them in here, make sure it looks good, and that we're happy with it. I think that looks great. You can slide them in or out. If you want longer guns, you can have longer ones. Right about there is about what the real one looks like, so we'll go with that. I'm just gonna slide them back out. Put a little bit of glue in there. Slide it back in. Right about there. Same thing on this one. Make sure they're even with each other. All right. All right, so we got this all done. We need to charge up some batteries, put some props on it, and go take it for a test flight. Okay, so one important thing that you have to remember when you're getting ready to fly your airplane is make sure your CG is right. Now, for battery placement, we just put the piece of Velcro on the battery tray like so, and we're gonna put this one almost all the way at the back. It's just a 2200 3S. I'm gonna just stick the nose on here and check for CG. We've got holes marked in here. And right there's perfect. So I'm gonna plug the battery in and we're gonna go fly. All right, so it's a beautiful fall day out here at Edgewater. The runway's under construction right now, so we're just gonna make do with it. But let's take off and see how it does. And it's just a gentle bird in the air. Hands off, no trim needed. Yeah, I'm running about 30% expo, and we're using differential thrust. And I mean, it just has a great presence in the air and flies tremendously well. I'm gonna spin around here. We're gonna drop some golf balls. Look at that. All right, thanks for coming along on the journey, and we'll see you next time.